Jazzcast Pros.
Welcome to the High Vibe Table Talks podcast. This is your host, Marshawn Hargrave, and today we have a really special interview. We're interviewing Casey Rossi, who is an entrepreneur for over 30 years. Did she start when she was 10? She's amazing. And we are going to be diving deep into self-trust and the practice that you should develop. You know, we think about all of the courses and tactical pieces of entrepreneurship, and if I just need to learn how to do this, and if I take this course or get this certificate, that I will be a better entrepreneur. And Casey and I really kind of flip that on its head today and talk about looking within and developing alignment with your highest self, and that's how you're going to be a successful entrepreneur. And from someone who has been an entrepreneur for 30 years, she has a lot of really, really great wisdom to share with us. Hello, and welcome back to the High Vibe Table Talks, the podcast to help you, the cautiously ambitious woman, remove mental barriers and take action now so that you can achieve your someday desires.
So Casey Rossi is an executive coach and leadership consultant who helps mission-driven CEOs optimize their performance, productivity, and profits while aligning with their purpose. Casey's been a full-time entrepreneur since 1991, building 6- and 7-figure businesses. She is a certified mindset coach, emotional intelligence practitioner, and trained in neuro-linguistic programming, which allows her to bring deep insight into her coaching. We are going to dive into some really great stuff today. So without further ado, let's get into my interview with Casey Rossi.
Thank you, Casey, for joining me today. I'm really excited to have you on because so much of your work that you do for entrepreneurs is looking within. And it's about the reflection of self and being aligned with our highest self versus looking externally and building your business in alignment with yourself. You have been an entrepreneur since 1991. Talk about longevity. So can you talk about the biggest reasons why you think you've been able to stick with it that long?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's like an unrelentless connection to perseverance. Part of that, I think, is maybe because I'm a Taurus. For sure, I'm stubborn. I'm stubborn to want to figure it out and continue with it. And I think also for 20 of those years, I had a business partner. And so there was this wonderful synergy and strength that we could rely on one another. When I had a weakness, she was strong and vice versa. So I think, I have a 32-year career as being an entrepreneur, but the first 20 years was a solid foundation. It was also based in spirituality and faith. And I think that allowed me to build pillars on top of that and become that unshakable, entrepreneur that just continues to see like, okay, if that didn't work, what's the next plan and what's the next plan? And having multiple plans without feeling like you're a failure, but just really learning and taking those learning lessons and moving forward and really alchemizing what could be a weakness into something that is like fueling you to be your best self.
Yeah. So do you think that having a business partner was really helpful in having kind of that short-term memory and being like, pick me up when the failure did happen and not attaching the failure as I am a failure? It's this didn't work and we're going to try something else.
Absolutely. I think it was crucial for me because I started my first corporation when I was 19 and I didn't have the life experience or business experience. And my business partner was 24 years my senior. So that initial connection that we had really formed a big part of my mindset and a big part of that, like Marie Forleo says, it's all figure outable. And that's very indicative. Like we started 9 businesses together in the first 4 years. And so it was like,
wow,
there's wisdom in that. And then there was a lesson in that. And I think that the lesson in that was we didn't really give it enough time, each one of those ventures, enough time to actually fructify. So we probably popcorned quicker than we should. But the flip of that is keep trying until you hit the sweet spot. And on our 10th business, we hit that sweet spot. And that was really something where it was kind of a surprise. We had a little joke. I said, I'm in this for 10 times with you, but if 10 times doesn't work, can we agree that we're going to do something conventional? So, we went through the 9 lives, and as fate would have it, our confection manufacturing company, hit 7+ figures year after year. And we ran that for 17 years. So that was, part of our destiny. And that was the thing that kicked me off into, that bug of entrepreneurialism. I often joke that it's in our DNA. Like, we're willing to take the risks. I don't think that I could go back. It's just, I'm kind of addicted to freedom. Really become a top core value for me is that freedom lifestyle.
Yeah, it's such an amazing thing. And this kind of segues really well into my next question, is because while the freedom is so beautiful, the other end of the stick is that all of the decisions are on you. So as an entrepreneur, one of the hardest things that I find is you don't just get to show up and kind of check your boxes and then walk away. Like, all decisions are on you all the time. And being in business and staying in business and even the popcorning for as long as you did, you have to have trust in yourself and your decisions. That self-trust, is it something you've always had, or did you have to build that up? And what would you attribute your self-trust to?
Such a great question. I feel like it is still a work in progress. I think that it's something that many of us don't have a rule book on, and we don't have the luxury of having a culture that has infused us with trust in general, let alone self-trust. And so for me, I feel like I've had to learn that along the way, and it's been a painful process, to be really honest with you. And I think that the dedication to personal and spiritual development is what has allowed some of that armoring to get cracked away, and some of the muscle to be built in of, like, you're absolutely right in the fact that as entrepreneurs, all the decisions land on us. And there was something really empowering with that me, myself, and I model, and also something that's alarming and can be really a challenge. And I think one of the things that I would recommend for any entrepreneur, especially startup entrepreneurs, is cultivate that muscle first. It will save so many mental swirls and energy drains. And if someone told me that 3 decades ago, it would have been a much more fluid process. That and confidence, I think those 2 big things, if I realized before I did my business plan, before I took all the courses and certifications, to do whatever I could to cultivate confidence and to bring that connection with me and me, that the mind me and the body me, that would have just been brilliant.
Yeah, there's so much out there, like you said, around like courses and certifications. And if I just learn this, then I'll know how to do it. And it's so backwards. Entrepreneurship is it's its own course on self-growth and reflection and what are my strengths and weaknesses. And it sounds like throughout the process also you've given yourself a lot of grace through all of it, because I think there's no way you can keep going if you don't give yourself grace for the should haves and what would I've done differently and why did I make this decision?
Yeah, absolutely. And, in full transparency, I would say that I did not give myself grace in the first 2 decades. And it was only after I had been diagnosed with adrenal fatigue and burnout that I realized that this is not sustainable. And that's when I actually started to give myself an option to unsubscribe from that outdated paradigm of hustle and grind that just really brought me to the point of weekly visual migraines and being so disconnected with myself and totally living chin up. And so, yes, it took a lot of time. I hope that your listeners will get a spark of motivation to not have to have it take that long. Yeah, again, it's almost like learn from my pain and start baking in pieces that feel more balanced and aligned right off the bat.
Yeah.
So you don't wait until you cross a boundary or you are exhausted at the end of the day. You don't have anything left for yourself and others. So yeah, I would say 2/3 of my whole experience has been learning the hard way. And then this last decade has really been focused on an alternative.
If you've been thinking about starting a podcast and you want to include interviews with people across town, Riverside.fm offers unbelievable high-quality recordings regardless of your or your guest internet quality. And it also gives you separate audio and video tracks for each person speaking. And unlike Zoom, you don't have to install anything on your computer, and your guests don't either. Head over to Riverside.fm and use promo code JazzyCast to get 60 free minutes of recording and 15% off a membership plan.
Yeah, because on your website, one of the things that really stuck with me is you say, for many years, I subscribed to the paradigm that hard work is honest work. If I wanted to be successful, I had to play the game, wear button-down shirts, and grind my way to the top. So how have you been able to decouple the idea that success equals working harder, grinding, and all the things that are kind of baked into the hustle culture?
Definitely. I think one of the big things is being so mindful of my inputs. And that includes everything that we take in, especially on digital platforms, because that really can lend ourselves to comparing, starting that should train. I should look like this. I should be at this level. And so that has been very, very helpful, is to really minimize the amount of digital inputs that I allow inside of myself. And then also my relationship to it, being that when I had my 7+ figure business, that's when I was burned out for me. So for me, my 6-figure business is much more balanced. That's not to say that I won't want to grow back in that way, but just in my experience, less has been more for me, because I do have that freedom and flexibility, and I do have a relationship with saying no now. And that's one of the things that I help my clients, is that unlinking between that people pleasing and lack of boundaries and the feeling that you need to be saying yes all the time in order to achieve. And really been an linking process and an unwinding process. And so much of that, Mershawn, really goes back to our nervous system. And so for me, having this deeper relationship with my nervous system regulation has allowed me the opportunity to unhook and just unsubscribe from that. And it's not an overnight thing. I do want to be like underscoring. If it is for you, amazing. I'm all for quantum leaps. Absolutely. But for me, it wasn't. It was a little bit more of a layered, slow process. It was understanding why I had anxiety if there was white space in my calendar. It was making that mind-body connection of, why do I say yes to a bunch of volunteer things and then go, wait, I don't even have the bandwidth for that. There's so many layers to this whole piece that I think has become a trendy hashtag of work-life balance. We could have chapters and chapters of what has brought us to this hustle and grind mentality. And I think the bottom line is fear, because we don't really see it modeled well. So there's this fear of like, well, she's not doing it, so I can't. And if I do it, then I'm going to be less than. And so there's so many pieces. And I love the fact that we are coming into a little bit more of a feminine rising. And in that, we are seeing leaders more committed to alignment than we have ever seen before. And that's so very exciting for me. And I think the more we can start to see models, healthy models, it helps us give our own self permission when we see others before us giving their self permission.
Yeah.
Hey, if you like this episode, check out Getting Real with Bossy, where we chat about what it's like to be a woman business owner. We cover all the topics: figuring out the rules and regulations, navigating business partnerships,
even if that's your spouse, motherhood while running a business, working within your values,
and all the ups and downs of being the boss.
Are you ready to get real? Pop over to our podcast,
Getting Real with Bossy.
I want to go back quickly because something that you said hit deeply. And you said having a relationship with no. That is so powerful. I think we are so quick, especially as women, to say yes to the volunteer things and the shoulds. And like you said, the should train. But thinking about no as its own entity and the relationship and the power that can come from that relationship. I just want to sit with that for a second because that just really, really hit me when you said that. So thank you.
I'm glad. And I think it's so important, and you're really modeling for your listener to pause. And I think when we can be on stimulus overload and really almost be on this like digital downloads just constantly, we often forget to pause and actually breathe into and reflect, why did that hit me so deeply? And then take it even further. Like when you think about your relationship with no, where do you feel that in your body? And just kind of explore that with yourself. Is there a tightness in your throat? Is there a nervousness in your belly? And if so, what messages are those bodily kind of signals trying to communicate with you? And we often don't pause enough to listen to the body wisdom that is giving us little subtle clues of how we can become more at peace and happier.
One of my favorite classes that I took in college was anatomy and physiology, because our body is built like, it's incredible what our body can do. And there's so much that, that was 2 semesters, and there's so much that can be learned. Our body mind connection. You have a really impressive set of certifications. I know you said that you kind of gathered those up, but for some people, I think with entrepreneurship, they may seem disconnected around like mind, body, eating, aromatherapy, neuro-linguistic practitioner, which are all certifications that you have. Can you tell us how things like mind, body, eating helps entrepreneurs?
Absolutely. Yes. So much of it really goes back to that mindfulness and that awareness. And so when we really think about high achievers and leaders and entrepreneurs, we are, like myself in the past, typically living the majority of our life chin up. And we rely on our mind to kind of row the boat, if you will. And so when you're looking at things like mind, body, eating, or somatic presencing, which are parts of my coaching, it really is to stimulate awareness. It's connecting to that intuition. It's turning inside to be aware of your body wisdom. And that can take some time because of the disconnection. And again, it kind of goes back to integration. When we live in our mind and we're kind of focused on achieving and to-do lists and what's the next best thing, versus like, how does that feel in my body? What's my relationship to that? It's really a game changer when you start to add in mindfulness and somatic awareness.
Yeah, you keep touching on awareness. And I think that's, if people want kind of a takeaway from, I think I do want to develop a deeper mind-body connection, especially when it comes to business. I think the first step that you have to do is awareness. And that is crucial in understanding and being able to make any changes. So that's really, really great. I see also that you offer a retreat, and it looks like a beautiful kind of refuge in nature. I was having a conversation with an entrepreneur yesterday, and she is going away for the weekend, and she's relatively new in business, and she was having the same conversation that I have with myself a lot of like, why can't I just work in my business more? And if I work harder and longer, I'll get to where I want to be faster. So my question is, why is it important for entrepreneurs to do things like retreats and get away from the business and kind of step away from that self-talk of, I just have to work faster, harder, more?
I think whether it's a retreat or whether it's a daily spiritual practice or a reflection practice like journaling, it's so crucial to have that baked in right off the bat, and baked in a way that you're using it before you need it. If you're proactive, you are going to get back the results tenfold. And I would say that there's lots of pieces in there. And part of this is like your self-regard and how much are you in the equation? Because I feel like for many of us, we have really become so good and making sure everybody else around us is fine, their cup is full, They're all good. And I think as an entrepreneur, you're wearing many hats, especially, as a woman, you're most likely a mother, you're a partner, you're a lover, you're a best friend, like you're all the things. You're the CEO. It's lots of hats to wear. And so at the end of the day, it's like, where are you in the equation? How do you show up for yourself? And it's also, I think it goes back to the modeling. How do you model this for your children? How do you model this for your clients? How do you model this for your community? And so it's really interesting. I just saw that like boutique content on YouTube is really on the rise, where they're showing this like slow down minimalistic lifestyle. I happen to absolutely love that as well. But I think in these times post-COVID, where there's been so much chaos, people are looking for this idyllic lifestyle. And here's the thing, it doesn't necessarily need to be idyllic. It could be your reality if that's what you choose, but it also can be little breaks and respites where you dip your toe in and you have this opportunity to be screen free, to maybe be speech free. There's a lot of beautiful silent retreats where people have amazing transformations and awarenesses. So depending on where you are in the spectrum when it comes to self-care, personal development, and all that good, juicy stuff, there's such an array right now, which is the beautiful thing. We have a lot of options where we didn't necessarily have those 20, 30 years ago, but we do now. So one of the things is just getting super clear and seeing where you're pulled to. Where are you a little bit excited to, get more information or dip your toe in? But I think whatever it is, it's really an opportunity to unplug, to lay down all of the obligations and shoulds, and to put yourself number one so you can actually see when you're missing in the equation when you get back to your quote unquote real life, and then have options and choices illuminated to how to bring that in so it feels more normal. And so it feels more, not like this super special elusive thing that only if you make X dollars can you afford to do Y. There's a lot of different things on the spectrum that don't have to cost a lot. You could go forest bathing for free. And studies show that has a dramatic help, even in cancer care. It doesn't necessarily have to be this amazing retreat in LA. It could literally be going to the park and not speaking, not listening to a podcast, and communing with nature and really being with yourself. And that can be very scary for people. We have a listener that's like, oh, that sounds great, so airy-fairy, next. And we're so wound, and it's really not our fault because media is really designed to make us go down rabbit holes.
Yeah.
So you have to be extra disciplined. If this is important to you, it's got to be part of your top priorities that you are consciously aware of every single day, or you will go in a swirl.
Yeah. I mean, the companies make billions of dollars by keeping us there and making us feel that should and want to emulate these other people. And so, building the muscles and the practice of self-discipline and self-trust are just the backbone of being successful. And I don't say that meaning like monetarily, that is a nice aspect of it, but having that balance and not going through that burnout.
And when you're talking about alignment, that is all about your backbone. And that is all about what you prioritize as your core.
Girl, where have you been? I haven't seen you at work in a while.
Girl, I quit and started my own business.
Really? That's amazing. How did you do it?
Well, I've been listening to this Beauty Boss Millionaire podcast, and it really helped me change my mindset from an employee to a CEO.
All that from a podcast?
Yes, the Beauty Boss Millionaire walks you through the process of starting a business and making your first million.
I need that in my life. I need someone to help me.
Just go to beautybossmillionaire.com or pull it up on your favorite podcast app. It's time to boss up.
I want to bring back the grace piece, because as you hear these thoughts and ideas, and you can try them on and see if they fit for you. And that's the best thing that you can do, is really kind of not believe me, but try on something that feels like a spark to you, and see how it feels in your own mind and body, and go from there. Be patient with yourself and just kind of trust that process, but just keep showing up for yourself, because you will see results.
So beautiful. So beautiful. Thank you so much. So, lightning round questions. For Casey Rossi, a must-read book is?
Buddha and the Badass.
Oh, awesome. I have not heard of that one. Creativity means to me?
Being open to hear your inner voice.
Mm-hmm. My favorite meal is?
I want to say pizza, even though I've got a lot of dialogue coming up after that, but I'm going to go with pizza.
The best piece of advice I ever heard was?
Know thyself as soul.
Can you say that again?
Know thyself as soul.
Wow, that's good. Oof. There are so many little nuggets that I'm just going to be ruminating in after this conversation today. Something on my bucket list is?
I would really like to be a good dancer.
Ooh. Like any specific type of dance?
I mean, I like hip hop. I just would like to be a good dancer, and I would like to have the confidence to like fully express myself without holding back.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. Very cool. And last one, if I could have dinner with one person, dead or alive, it would be?
Oh my goodness, so interesting. I am going to share with you, I heard this question on a podcast this week, and the answer really struck me. And the answer that this gentleman said, it was Jim Deathmere, and he's actually one of my instructors in a program that I'm in. And he said that he would want to be in the presence of someone that made them feel alive, whether they had to speak or not speak. And I thought that was so beautiful. The power of their presence is the piece that would just like blow you away.
Wow. That's really, really good. So as I'm sure many, many listeners are, they're going to want to hear more from you. So where can people find and connect with you?
Awesome. Well, if they love podcasts, they can tune into mine, which is Women Developing Brilliance, the Spirit of Business. And everything else is on my website, which is caseyrossi.com.
Perfect. Yes. You do have a wonderful, wonderful podcast. I was lucky enough to be a guest last year, and it's just, again, if you like this podcast and are into inspiration, connection, manifestation, and balance, definitely check out Casey's podcast.
Thank you for doing the work that you do. Keep spreading that positive ripple. It was an absolute joy to connect with you.
How wonderful was that conversation? I mean, seriously, Casey just emulates, even through speakers and virtually, just this beautiful essence. And there were so many parts of her story that I didn't know before chatting with her today. And it was really cool to just see, you know, when you hear some of those stories, you're like, wow, that's how you have developed into such a beautiful being. And it's just fascinating to see kind of some behind the scenes of how entrepreneurs got to where they are. So thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you next week on the High Vibe Table Talks podcast. Thank you.